Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove, and I'm back with my new coaching reality series called From a Coach's Perspective. Today, I want to talk about dieting hacks that I utilize with my clients to help them surpass a plateau with their health, their physique, and their performance in the gym. All right, now the word diet gets thrown around a lot, and I know a lot of people have negative thoughts towards dieting, right? The first thing a lot of people think of when they hear the word diet, they think restriction. Oh, I can't have this. I can't have that. I've got to add in this. I've got to take out this. I'm going to feel like crap. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be irritable. Right. I understand that. But if you can put together a nutritional plan that is going to allow you to feel better, look better, and perform better and recover better, it's going to become a nutritional plan that is not only successful, but it's sustainable for life. All right. So I'm going to give you a few dieting hacks that I utilize with my clients to help them surpass their plateaus and to help the whole dieting process be much more easier for them to get through. Because let's face it, the diet is with you 24 hours a day, right? The training is only with you for an hour a day max. You go to the gym, you're there for an hour, you leave, you got 23 hours left in your day. But dieting is a 24-hour, 7-day a week job. All right. So if you're going to commit to it, you want to commit to something that is easier to follow and that is going to become more sustainable. Because if it's sustainable, as I said, it will be successful. And if you are successful at it, you're going to continue to do it for life, right? And not only that, but it's going to create a healthier relationship with food for you. And it's also going to create a healthier relationship with your eating habits. All right. Because I feel that a lot of people suffer from poor eating habits and having a very poor relationship with dietary nutrition. All right. So the first dieting hack I want to talk about is portion control. Now, without a doubt, portion control is one of the most common reasons why people struggle to lose weight, especially here in North America. The portions here are ridiculous. All right. You go to a restaurant, the portions are honestly, every restaurant I go to, the portions that I see are twice as big as the portions of my own meals that I make for myself. All right. And I'm a big guy, over 200 pounds. And I can never finish my plate when I go out to a restaurant, okay? Because the portions are just too big. So you want to practice portion control. The best way to practice portion control, purchase a food scale to weigh out your proteins and purchase a measuring cup to measure out your carbohydrates and your fats. You can also weigh out your fats and your carbs as well on the food scale if you like. Okay. But I like to measure out my fats, measure out my carbs, and weigh my proteins. But the take home message there is that everything is portioned out accordingly. Now, how much should you have of protein, carbs, and fats? Well, that's going to depend on multiple factors, activity level being one. Your goal, are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to gain weight? How much weight are you trying to lose? How much weight are you trying to gain? Your physical limitations, your overall activity level, how often you're in the gym. Do you have an active job, a set of entry job? So those are all things that you would have to figure out first and then plug in your macronutrients accordingly. But if you're not practicing portion control, it's very difficult to know where to make changes. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're someone who says, I want to lose, we're midway through March right now. It says, I want to lose 30 pounds by July 1st, which in my opinion, for a lot of people, especially if you are someone who's very overweight, that's a realistic goal. But if you're just going to say, well, I'm just going to start eating clean, you might lose 5 or 6 pounds, but you're going to hit a wall. You're going to hit a plateau. And you won't know what to do next because, yeah, you've been eating clean, but you have no idea how much carbs you've been having. You have no idea how much protein you've been having, how much fats you've been consuming, or how much calories you've been taking in each day. But if you're starting off with a blueprint and you have a general understanding, okay, I'm having 300 grams of carbs per day, I'm having 70 grams of fat per day, and I'm having 200 grams of protein per day, you know exactly where to make revisions when you do hit that plateau. So portion control, in my opinion, is essential. Even if you're just trying to maintain your current body weight, look at me. I'm not trying to build muscle. I'm not trying to lose fat. I'm just trying to maintain my current physique. And for me to do that, I still do portion control because I know exactly how much protein, carbs, and fats I need in a day. And I listen to my body. So I'm not super restrictive. If at the end of the day I'm still craving like a little bit more food, maybe I was a little bit more active. Maybe I had more clients on the floor. Maybe I was moving around a bit. Maybe I had a leg workout, which I exerted more energy. So I'll have a little bit more, maybe carbohydrates or more fats or more protein. So I listen to my body. But I don't just go on emotion. I don't just go, well, I'm bored, so I'm going to eat mindlessly. Okay. Because mindless snacking is another reason why people gain weight. All right. So a lot of people say, well, I'm just gonna have a snack. But to me, snacks equate to weight gain. All right. Because they're uncontrolled, they're mindless eating, they're not practicing portion control. So rather than have snacks, have smaller meals throughout the day and make sure that they're portioned out accordingly. All right. once you get into that habit, I promise you it becomes so easy to follow. I know for a lot of people, weighing out their food, measuring out their food, it's overwhelming at first, but it's like anything in life. The more you do it, it just becomes habit. And for myself, I cook all my meals ahead for the week, like a lot of my clients do, and it takes 2 hours. And I'm not kidding you, I cook up easily 42 meals in easily 2 hours, and I'm set for the week. All right. And that's including weighing out all my meals, okay? Because it takes no time whatsoever. So it does at first seem a bit overwhelming, but I promise you, if you practice portion control, you're going to become much more successful, both in the gym and with your physique and your health. All right. The second thing I want to talk about a dieting hack is understanding your macronutrients and your micronutrients. Now, if you're someone who trains on a regular basis, you go to the gym, all right, and you train, I don't know, 5, 6 days a week. Hell, even if you train 3 days a week, you want to make sure that you're plugging in your macronutrients accordingly around your workout. Now, if you're someone who trains first thing in the morning, I've talked about this in the past, and you prefer to train in a fasted state, I have no problem with that. But if you are someone who's training, let's say at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you've been up for 6 or 7 hours, I would hope that you have at least two meals in you. They don't have to be big meals, but preferably a meal pre-workout, like something like a lean protein, like chicken breasts, and a complex carbohydrate, like some white rice, brown rice, quinoa, yams, sweet potatoes, something that is just going to fuel your glycogen storages so that you can lift the weights, all right, so that you can get through your workout, so that you're not going to burn out within the first 15, 20 minutes, or you're not going to need extended rest periods sitting on your phone between sets, okay? So you want to fuel your body properly with the right nutrients. And that's why it's important to understand not just the macronutrients, but the micronutrients, the quality of your food you're consuming. So notice I said chicken breast for lean protein. I didn't say chicken thigh. And notice I said white rice, or I said yams, I said sweet potatoes. I didn't say go have a muffin, right? I didn't say go have French fries, because when you're having simple carbohydrates or you're having fatty proteins, those are going to make you feel lethargic. So it's important to understand the micronutrients, the quality of the macronutrients that you're consuming. And as I talked about, if you're someone who, for example, you train first thing in the morning and you prefer to train in a fasted state, I'm okay with that. As long as the last meal of your day has some fats and protein in there, just to allow you to feel fuller for a longer period of time. So another thing I do, another dieting hack I'll utilize with my clients as far as macronutrients are concerned, I will what I call backload their fats. So I'll put more fats towards the end of the day. Not because I'm afraid of utilizing carbohydrates at night, but because our body doesn't really need carbs at night. I mean, most people, by the time they get home from work, the gym, 6, 7 o'clock at night, you're not going to be doing much. You might watch TV for a few hours, have a shower, but you're not going to be running a marathon. You're not going to be going to the gym. You're going to be relaxing, right? So your body doesn't need carbohydrates at this point. So for your body to be able to rest and recover, what I recommend people do is have more fats and protein before they go to bed. So something like a tablespoon of peanut butter and a scoop of whey protein isolate. That'd be perfect, right? Because it's going to allow your body just to sleep and it won't have to process those carbohydrates, because it's harder for the body to digest carbohydrates than it is for fats and protein. It also takes the body a little bit longer to digest fats and protein. So that's something that's nice and slow releasing as you sleep. That's another reason why I don't recommend consuming fats pre-workout, because fats do take longer to digest. You don't want something that takes longer to digest to consume before you train. So that's why I recommend complex carbohydrates and a very small portion of lean protein. So a small portion, 4 ounces of chicken breast, that should be sufficient. All right. So plugging in your macronutrients at certain parts of the day will really make the dieting process more sustainable for you. For me, I've always trained at different times of the day, just the way my schedule is. Sometimes I train at 5 a.m., sometimes I train at 5 p.m., sometimes I train at 1 p.m., but I still plug in my meals around my workout. My two biggest carb meals are usually pre-workout, post-workout. All right, that's for me, and that works really well. My meals towards the end of the day are primarily fat and protein, very little carbs, okay, because that allows me to sleep and recover. That's what works for me. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to work for you, but that's what works for me and works for a lot of my clients who do train with weights on a regular basis. All right. So understanding your macronutrients and more importantly, the micronutrients, that's essential along with practicing proper portion control. The third dieting hack I want to talk about is creating food volume. Now, you know how I talk about small portions? Well, small portions are good, but you also want to make sure that you do feel somewhat satisfied after your meal, right? And like I said, not stuffed, not to the point where you can't move or you're tired or you need to open up your belt, not like that. But you want to feel somewhat like, okay, yeah, I feel good now. I ate. My body is not, I'm not hungry now, right? So creating more volume with your food by utilizing things like greens. I always tell my clients when I do nutritional plans, I put greens on everyone's plans, asparagus, broccoli, spinach. I say have as much as you want. I don't care. You don't even have to measure it. Okay. That's the one thing I don't ask people to measure their greens. Have as much greens as you want. Notice I'm saying greens though. Greens are what we call fibrous carbohydrates. So I don't even count them as carbs because your body has to burn them to consume them. So they're actually really good for fat burning. All right. They also allow you to feel fuller for a longer period of time as well because your body does have to break them down. Okay. So that's why fibrous carbohydrates are, in my opinion, they're essential. They're also going to help keep you regular. Okay, so you're not going to be constipated. So having things like greens in your meals, you can really load up on that volume. So if you are someone who's really used to having large portions and now you're downsizing, filling up your plate with a bunch of greens, I know it's not going to taste as good as filling up your plate with a bunch of French fries, but at the same time, it's going to allow you to feel fuller for a longer period of time. All right. Psychologically, too, just seeing more food on your plate might be easier. So that's why I'm a big advocate of utilizing things like salads. So you throw your chicken in a salad, a bunch of lettuce, that can help. All right. So utilizing those greens in your meals, that can be a game changer. Creating more volume. Egg whites. A lot of people, when I put egg whites on their plan, I say cook your egg whites because when you cook egg whites, if you cook 2 cups of egg whites, which is, honestly, it's not very much calories. You can make a huge egg white omelet. Throw an egg yolk in there as well. You have a huge omelet right there. Okay. So making sure that you're taking advantage of low calorie foods by utilizing high volume. Whey protein, that's another good one to use. You can use a scoop of whey protein. You can throw that in with a peanut butter shake. That will allow you to feel fuller for a longer period of time. All right. So making sure that you do understand that if you're putting more volume into your food and you're utilizing foods that are lower calorie but have more volume to them, it's going to psychologically allow you to feel fuller for a longer period of time. Okay. I want to touch back on that for a second because I talked about the peanut butter. When you look at nutritional labels, this is an important one. You don't want to just get stuck on, wow, that nutritional label on the peanut butter says 100 calories for a tablespoon. That's crazy. That's so many calories. It's like, yeah, that sounds like a lot on paper, but you have to remember that 1 tablespoon of peanut butter is going to allow you to feel fuller for a longer period of time, just like the greens, okay? Because fats allow your body to feel fuller for a longer period of time. So if you have that 1 tablespoon, which is 100 calories, if that's going to stop you from binging on a bag of potato chips or binging on a bag of chocolates later on in the night, have the tablespoon of peanut butter, okay? It's going to work much better for you. All right. So that's why it's so important that when you're reading food labels that you truly understand what you're reading and don't just look at the calories. All right. Look at the macronutrients. And I've talked about on the Q&A numerous times how I don't count calories. I count macronutrients and I look at the micronutrients, the quality of the food that you're consuming. All right. So I want to touch base on those macros again because that's so important. So when you are reading food labels, don't just get caught up on the calories. And that leads me into my next dieting hack: food labels, nutritional labels. Learn to read them. The number one thing you should be looking at when you read a food label, before you look at carbs, before you look at protein, before you look at calories, before you look at fats, sugar. The rule of thumb I have with every single person I work with, every single person, whether they're trying to gain weight or lose weight, if it contains more than 5 grams of sugar per serving, put it back on the shelf. You don't need it. Unless you're saving it for like a cheat meal, sure. But otherwise, you don't need it. Okay. The human body, for an active male, you don't need more than 30 grams of natural sugar per day. For an active female, you don't need more than 25 grams of sugar per day. So for the average sedentary person, you don't need more than 10 grams of sugar per day. You don't. Okay. And keep in mind, I'm not talking about people who are diabetic here. I'm talking about people who are just overall trying to lose weight, who are just overall healthy and fit. Okay. So you want to make sure that your sugar intake is in check. So when you read a nutritional label, that is the first thing you should be looking at. When you're also looking at food labels, you want to make sure that you're looking at things like trans fats. I'm someone who does really try my best to avoid trans fats. I know it's sometimes difficult to do, but you have to remember trans fats, we don't need trans fats. The body doesn't need trans fats. These are man-made fats. They're not good for us, okay? Saturated fats are not terrible, but at the same time, you want to limit your saturated fat intake, okay? So don't be afraid of having a little bit of saturated fat. The body does need some, but we want to kind of steer away from those fats as well and focus more on the polysaturated fats. Okay. So the fats that you would get from like avocado are your omega fats that you would get from omega-3 eggs. Those are good fats to have. As far as carbohydrates, I touched on this earlier. Complex carbohydrates work best for simple carbs. So simple carbs would be the carbohydrates that you find in cookies and muffins, pastries, okay, which you also find trans fats in those foods as well. So good foods to avoid, all right? Complex carbohydrates are going to be found in quinoa, brown rice, yams, oatmeal, cream of rice, and so on. Okay, so those are the foods that we want to utilize more to help replenish glycogen storages. They're not going to spike your insulin levels and crash your blood sugar levels. So learning to read food labels is essential. All right. And the fifth and final dieting hack that I recommend to all clients, you need to stay hydrated. There's so many times people confuse hunger with hydration. All right. There's a good chance if you are finding that you're hungry, you're lethargic, or you're feeling sore and you're just like, oh, I don't know, I'm feeling drained. There's a good chance you're dehydrated. All right. So this is why I tell everyone I work with, I want you consuming a minimum of 2 liters of water a day. That's hard for a lot of people. 2 liters of water, that's a lot of water. But if you are someone who works out on a regular basis, that shouldn't be that difficult to do. If you're someone who doesn't work out on a daily basis, I understand that's a little bit more challenging. However, there are little hacks that you can use to make drinking water more easier. You could get some BCAAs, some flavored BCAAs, right? You get some Crystal Light. I'm not afraid of a little bit of aspartame. As long as you're not consuming artificial sweeteners all day long, but a little bit, in my opinion, is fine. Okay, so I think things like sucralose and things like Splenda, things like twin sugar, they've been blown out of proportion that they're so bad they're going to cause cancer. And listen, if you're having a little bit of aspartame per day, I think that's fine. Okay. Even having like a little bit of, diet soft drink, diet Pepsi, 1 can a day. Again, I don't think that's a big deal. I do that myself. I got one right here, diet Pepsi. I have 1 or 2 cans a day. Okay. It helps when you're having a bit of a sweet tooth or you're just craving something a little bit different, maybe with some carbonation, but you want to stay hydrated. And I'm not suggesting that diet pop is going to hydrate you, by the way. I'm just saying that it's okay to have a little bit of sucralose, a little bit of aspartame, in my opinion. Okay. But to get back to the water, by having those BCAAs, and you can buy natural BCAAs, they have them, but you can also buy the ones that are sweetened with stevia, right? So that will help make drinking water a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit easier to get down. So rule of thumb that I use with my clients is either with or after each meal, I want you to pound back at least 1 glass of water. All right. So if I'm giving you 6 meals a day, I want 6 glasses of water. All right. And when you're training throughout the day, so if you're doing a workout, I try to get my clients in the habit of drinking, just sipping on water throughout the workout. So, say they finish a circuit of 3 or 4 stations, just grab a quick swig of water. You don't need to chug it, just a quick swig of water. Keep the body hydrated, keep the glycogen receptors full from the carbohydrates, and that's going to allow you to train more efficiently in the gym. All right. So, that's the fifth dieting hack that I utilize with people is to stay hydrated. Okay. So, practice portion control, understand your macronutrients and your micronutrients, learn how to read food labels, learn how to utilize food volume, and stay hydrated. All right. Those are the 5 dieting hacks that I recommend to everyone if you are trying to transition from poor eating habits to good eating habits and you're trying to follow a plan that is sustainable, not just for a few weeks or a few months, but for life. Anyway, that's it for this week's episode. If you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, your training program, supplements you're currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, as well as my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. And if you haven't checked out this week's No Filter Q&A, I just posted it this past Monday. Check it out today. And please like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.